Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurist, what is the Metaverse? Today on the good ship SS tomorrow, we're going to go into a strange new digital world. We're going to enter the realm that is known as the Metaverse. So what is the Metaverse? The Metaverse is going to replace the internet as we know it. This is the stages of Web 3.0. Even though Tim Berners-Lee's definition, this could be as high as Web 5.0. Basically, it's adding extra dimensions to the 2D internet that we know and love today. It's going to be a whole new immersive experience. Now, unless you were sleeping under a rock in the last week of October 2021, at the time of this recording, you may have noticed that Facebook has changed the name of the parent company from Facebook to Meta. Why? Because Zuckerberg has seen something and he's been investing in this for quite some time now. He's seeing the value of the Metaverse. And what does that mean? And I'll play you this clip now.
To reflect who we are and what we hope to build, I am proud to announce that starting today, our company is now Meta. Our mission remains the same. It's still about bringing people together. Our apps and their brands, they're not changing either. And we are still the company that designs technology around people. Now we have a new North Star to help bring the Metaverse to life.
It means the convergence of the R's, so your XR, your AR, and your VR. So your extended reality, your augmented reality, and your virtual reality. Basically, internet's going to get lifted off your screen and it's going to be surrounded around you. Everything. And we're talking all sorts of Internet of Things and beyond will be chatting. And it's actually going to make your mobile phone obsolete by the end of the decade. Yeah, some of us might remember 5 years ago playing Pokemon Go. Well, this is Pokemon Go on steroids. This is a very weird and wonderful world that we're going to enter. And in the Metaverse, you can be anyone who you want. And we've got people coming up later in this series who actually can change your voice. And we can even change into a different avatar. You can live however you wish inside the Metaverse. Now, you might remember this clip from The Matrix.
After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Are you ready to take the red pill? Now, here's an interesting thought experiment for you. There's all this argument about us living already in a computer simulation. Well, within the Metaverse, we'll be living not just inside a simulation, we'll be in a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation. It's going to get really, really trippy for the next 3 weeks. And today's guest, Luke Levine from XRA over in Portugal, is one guy who's creating a corner of the Metaverse. See, Luke is combining ancient wisdom and psychedelics and all sorts of stuff with modern technology to create an extended reality. And this is going to be a very fascinating philosophical discussion and a good taste of the Metaverse. And welcome back to The Friendly Futurist, and today we're discussing extended reality with Luke Levine. And in case you don't know what extended reality is, it's stimulated by a computer simulation inside a computer simulation. If you know what I mean, it's going to freak out every stoner in the planet. But Luke, it's great to have you on the show.
Nice to meet you again, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
First and foremost, for those who don't know, can you talk us through extended reality? Or XR.
XR is, I guess, is a mix of VR and AR. So virtual reality is full immersion in the virtual world. So you're literally transported into another reality. And augmented reality is digital content overlaid onto the physical world. So holograms could be an example. There are many different versions of what that could look like. And lots of films have showcased the potential for a future that's augmented. Ghost in a Shell is a perfect example for virtual reality. Ready Player One. If you had a chance to see it, films like Minority Report, there's endless examples of how AR and VR are being kind of envisioned into the future.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you brought up holograms because it's been raised in this podcast before, the prospect of accelerating hologram technology because everyone's getting tired of Zoom. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really exciting. We're not quite yet there with Obi-Wan Kenobi. We haven't got to that place where it's totally possible because we're still working with manipulated light. We don't have a full 360 hologram that's projected into the physical space. I mean, but we have some good synthesized examples that give us the feeling that there is this holographic projection. But yes, it's an exciting technology that shows lots of potential, and there are quite a few people working with it.
And let's take a look back to this beginning, Luke. How did you first get started into extended reality?
You want the actual story? It's a bit of a trippy one.
That's what we're here for. Yeah.
Okay, so shall I give a bit of a summary of my background? I started off as an animator, a traditional hand-drawn animator, and that was my training. And then I worked quite quickly through the animation industry, trying my hand at many different types of animation, from 2D to 3D to stop motion. And then I was a storyboard artist, a concept artist for animation shows. And then I worked in music videos and commercials, where I was producing and directing, some of them were art directing or supporting different projects, which all were connected to animation. And then really becoming a kind of, I guess, an animation multidisciplinarian. And then worked in VFX for some time. And that journey it was just more of an exploration for me, just to get a sense of, everything was just an exploration. The journey of animation, even though it was my first big passion, because with animation, I felt that we could really change the world. I felt that very strongly as a child. And as a young adult, that animation had this amazing purism to it that could really kind of get into we could really affect our soul. I mean, I was heavily influenced by Disney films and growing up, and that you could really share beautiful messages with children. And as growing up, it felt like the truest thing there was in the spectrum of truth that I was aware of in a world of chaos. Animation somehow jumped at me and was like, this is true. This is something that we can, because of the process as well. The process is so, it's so labored. It's so passion driven. It doesn't make no sense. It makes absolutely no sense for someone to choose to become an animator because of the time cost kind of return thing, because the amount of energy you put, you might spend a day animating half a second of movement, and you have to love this. It has to go beyond logic to do animation. And that really called at me. So anyway, that journey took me down to filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, where I lived with anarchists for a year, making a film about living off grid. I lived on a protest site in Wales, up a tree, with a group of hardcore anarchists that were very beautiful. Anarchism is completely misunderstood as a concept, actually. But it was a magical time, and I got to learn about people coming together from all walks of life to rally behind an ideal or a value or a belief that they all connected to, which is preservation of life, preservation of nature. And then that actually led me into immersive storytelling. And the journey into immersive storytelling, which happened at 2008. And I don't know if you're familiar with PunchDrunk.
Yeah.
PunchDrunk are now working with Niantic. So they kind of partnered with the biggest AR studio in the world to create the future of what AR experiences or mixed reality experiences are going to be. And actually, when I had my first PunchDrunk experience, and it's like taking the blue pill for the first time, you're taken from the idea of animation, where it's just nothing exists that you don't create, but it's still quite flat. And then you have an immersive experience in a theatrical space, which was actually Edgar Allan Poe's Mask of the Red Death, that was repurposed by PunchDrunk as a kind of a walk-through narrative. So you walk through the space and you explore it and discover the different dimensions of the reality they've created for you. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, what is this experience? And it was in 2008. And immersive storytelling has become a bit of a buzzword today. But PunchDrunk really defined it before anyone else could conceptualize it. That changed how I wanted to tell stories. And then I kind of got into kind of creating immersive experiences. I had a restaurant, cabaret burlesque restaurant, nightclub, theatre space in London in 2010, which was kind of inspired from that, where it was just kind of this magical, I wanted to create these magical worlds. But then my inner conflict happened in 2011 when I was pulled into my family business, which was very traditional real estate. So I got pulled into real estate because my father had a real estate company building alpine chalets. And that caused a lot of inner conflict because I wanted to be an artist, but then I had this responsibility to the family. And I was like, how do I balance these two identities that I was carrying at the time? It's like, am I an artist? Am I the son of my father that's meant to build this empire with him, blah, 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 you know? And it's like, how do I marry these two worlds? And that took me to introspection because I couldn't deal with it on the outside. The outside didn't make sense. So you had to go inside. It's like, well, what am I? Who am I if I'm not an artist and I'm not a real estate developer, salesperson that follows the lineage of my family? And I started getting to spirituality, but I did eventually join my father's business for a few years and got into real estate, building and selling alpine developments and other high-end developments in London. But after about 3 or 4 years in that business, I had a real kind of realization. I was like, this is not my truth. As much as I followed it, this is very clearly not my thing. And at the time, Facebook had just bought Oculus from Palmer Luckey. And suddenly VR was just at the very, very, very beginnings of like within the development circle. And I like to keep my eye on future trends. And I was like, okay, so there's this thing. And VR had also been something that I'd known about or I'd dreamed about as an animator or as an immersive storyteller. So when I could see the opportunity of marrying these two worlds, and actually I went and meditated in the woods for 3 months as I was sitting there meditating, because I'd go to do a period of introspection where I was like, right, real estate's not for me. Where's my calling? What should I do? Is there a deeper calling? Do I have a soul? Does it tell me where to go? And I tapped in and just kind of really sat quietly for some time in France. And then after a while, I had this experience where I had a very clear message that came to me. It was like, you need to be in this space called VR, which I knew nothing about at the time, actually. So when I got this very clear, yes, this is the direction for you, I looked around, I researched it, and I saw a conference. There was a programmers conference happening in Munich. So I booked the first flight to Munich, went to this conference, and was like, right, I guess I need to be here. I'm going to meet someone that's going to guide me to my next thing or my next opportunity. It's going to come through this thing. But it's pretty, and those days were just programmers, like building software, really. There wasn't much, and that was not really my area of expertise. I'm a evangelist, I'm a sales guy. So, but I still had a feeling that there was, and I'm a creative too. So I met Ori Inbar, who actually at this conference, who is the founder of AWE, the Augmented World Expo, the biggest kind of conference for VR and AR. At the time, it was quite small, and I met him, and I had this, and I walked up to him and I said, Ori, I feel that you and I meant to work together. And he said, who are you? And I said, I just had this, I was really just following intuition at the time. And he was taken aback, but he said, look, come on board. And he gave me my first kind of shot in the AR VR space as kind of the creative director for the Augmented World Expo. So I was able to kind of define or shape the brand at the time from being quite a very kind of software-driven conference to something a bit more magical. Because what I felt was missing at the time from the VR space was the potentiality of this dream world, this transcendent possibility where kind of spirituality and VR were very closely linked to me, this idea of transcending self. And that's what VR represented for me, as an opportunity to transcend the self. And I was like, well, why is no one expressing that? Why is it so superficial? Why is VR just being seen as a simulation of the physical world? It's so boring. I want the magic. I want awe. And why is AWE not expressing? Even AWE is its awe. Why is it not using that as the tagline? It was just really clear that there was things that needed to be shown for this technology to fully express its potential. Yeah. So that was the journey. And then
that's the journey. That's a pretty good journey there.
trying to condense it. Then marrying real estate and VR was the first entry point for me.
You touch on it. I really love that story. Like how we are combining what essentially is this holistic approach, a spiritual approach into technology. Can we truly marry up ancient wisdom with modern technology?
At the moment, just to give you some transparency and total clarity, at the moment I'm having this internal, not want to say battle, but like this kind of conflict where I'm like, well, what am I trying to do? Because I really want to know where I'm moving from in life. It's so important for me to be energized to do anything. I have to feel true to what I'm doing because it has to be aligned with my purpose, my mission. Otherwise, there's no energy. That's why I'm really grateful to be on your podcast, because you give me an opportunity to express even this, and the ability for me to express it is connected to my truth. So it allows me really to unpack my own thoughts in my journey of life, my Luke's life. I believe very much that there is this potential to marry ancient wisdom and modern technology. And one of the things that I've been committed to in the last 2 years is exactly that. This, how do we bring ancient wisdom and package it in a way that is really accessible to people today? And the question is, why do I want to do that? Like, what's driving that? Like, why are you wanting to do that? And what's the value of it? And what does that even mean? Like, so many, because it just opens lots of questions. I mean, what is ancient wisdom? What is the relevance of it today to our own lives? How do we use it with technology? Why do we want to use it with technology? What drives that, right? And something I read today was really interesting about the nature of will. Like, we have to have a will to serve. And that if without that will, that driving force, nothing can be done. And that's a process of digging really, really deep in ourselves, because it's only by digging really deep and finding that motivation, that calling that's greater than ourselves, do we get that push to do things that are otherwise impossible or uncomfortable, where you put yourself, the self, my own me aside, and like, this is not about me. And when I'm motivated to do something beyond the self, we have this unbelievable energy that comes and supports us, but we have to, that sometimes it takes a existential crisis or unraveling of consciousness to get us to that place where we find that momentum to jump beyond. That's what I'm going through right now, is like, how do I do this thing? But the thing that I feel is really, I don't want to go off too much on a tangent about, is there a place for ancient wisdom and modern technology? But what is ancient wisdom? So I have used the Vedas. So there's, for me, so there's the monotheistic wisdom. So everything which comes from the Jewish faith. So which is the big three: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which if I categorize that as the Western. And it's very careful, because once you start talking about this, people go very quick to nitpick and go, no, it's not. I don't want to get too caught up in like fact, because I'm going to be fact checked a lot. But
yes,
ultimately, Christianity and Islam really emerged from Judaism, or the Abrahamic traditions. And that is interesting in the sense that the Torah is the Old Testament, which is the first book. And then the Bible has the New Testament, which is the story of Jesus, which emerged beyond the Torah, which is the continuation. And then Islam has the book which continues with the book of Muhammad, which is their prophet, which continues beyond. So it's the 3 books, the 2 books, the 1 book. Now, for me, at the root, and then you have the Vedic traditions, which is the Hindu traditions, which they express the Bhagavad Gita, the different kind of stories, which is very beautiful, which is kind of encoded in Sanskrit. And the Hebrew and Sanskrit, these 2 languages, which are what the original texts are written in, and the 2 wisdoms, for me are really the root, because it's the language themselves that's very special. And the language is important because what we have today with regards to wisdom is usually translations of scripture.
Yes.
So we have so when the Bible is, like, if you go to the Genesis, in the beginning, God created, or there was the word. We have different variations of translation. And we have got so caught up with the translations of text which is very linear to a certain degree, but it's still very mind orientated. It's still a process of connecting through mind, like digesting and then expanding into experiencing, the word of Christ. It's like you have to first think it, read it, and then feel it. That's, for me, still a disconnect from the essence of what the wisdom is. The wisdom, from my understanding, is not an intellectual thing. One can experience the essence of the wisdom just through the original letters, the languages themselves, the letters themselves, the ancient languages like Sanskrit, like Hebrew, like Aramaic, and many other light languages that exist. The symbols, the letters themselves carry a potency and energy that's almost more direct than the translated text. So the translation is 1 step or 2 steps away from the essence. The scriptures, the codes, it's like software, it's like binary, zeros and ones. The codes themselves, and you are the processor. When you scan the letters or you connect to the text, you feel in its purism, the essence, the energy emanating from these holy books. There's a reason why certain books are considered holy books. And the books themselves carry an energy and something later down the line, we call it magic, and there have been many kind of ancient secret societies that have built their own practice off the back of these wisdoms, trying to extrapolate the wisdom and use it for that. There's lots of bastardizations of the purism. But if we go to the purism of the text, the first text, the ones that were first given to us, like Moses, let's say, and then you've got historians who are like, Moses didn't exist. There's no exact proof. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, that Moses revealed the Torah, right? The first book, the 5 books of Moses, the Old Testament. And let's say the Bhagavad Gita, which was given to us 6,000 years ago, which are the Hindu texts, they carry an energy. The texts themselves, like the symbol Om, the shape, these letters, they carry a vibration. In the letters themselves, you experience the vibration, the energy that gives us the experience of expanded states. And from my understanding, the states, the expanded states that we experience are the closest connection that we can to the divine, the God within. This idea that something exists outside of us, for me, it doesn't make any sense. The truth is we experience these states, but when we connect to the wisdom, and it's something that's like Jesus would have said, the kingdom of God is within, the states are within us. Now, why is this important? When we connect to these texts, we have that experience. We have that direct experience. And that direct experience gives us the sensation of awe, awakening, presence, connection. And as we expand, we remove space. And removing space brings us closest to one, which is the purpose of all the wisdom, right? Is to bring us into the state of one, this removing the barriers, the obstacles, these ideas of separation between you and I, or me and that, the differences become minimal, and the experience of oneness becomes magnified through the connection to the vibrations, the energy that emanates from these texts, without even having to cognitively understand what they're saying. That cognitive part comes afterwards to help us contextualize the experience. But the experience is the first connection, the experience, the state of being at one with life, with God, with nature, with individuals, that is the truest place that we can be, as one, in the state, the experience of lovingness, right? Yeah,
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Thanks, man. So technology can enable, through my research and exploration of what these ancient wisdoms are and how they work and how we can access them, the closest approximation to the experience is music and sound. So I feel that the best relationship, for me, reading an ancient scripture like the Torah or experiencing it is like reading a musical sheet. You feel it. You feel the music. You feel the scripture. And when you listen to an amazing song, you feel like it hits you. You feel that, whoa, I'm expanding into that song. I'm expanding into the music. I'm expanding into the text. I'm expanding into this wisdom. And that brings me into that state of oneness, which can then be translated as all the things like in the beginning, and God came down and he was but that's secondary. The experience of it is so direct. And for me, it's light and it's sound. It's the essence of all creation. What is the essence of creation? Well, it's light. What is the structure of light and what is the structure of sound? And that's where we get into geometry and mathematics. So it's very interesting how everything is actually very connected. And sound has patterns and shapes, and we call it cymatics. And those shapes are almost a direct relationship to source, the closest relationship to source that we can find, and they are related to the blueprint of creation. And the same patterns that we see in sound and the same patterns that we find in light, the shapes we find in nature, in the sunflower. We talk about the golden ratio of Fibonacci sequence. We talk about these patterns and these shapes. And what we start to understand is a blueprint for all of creation. The expression of the divine within, in life, in all things, can be found in certain geometric patterns and shapes, which is what is also found in music, which is also what's found in life. And using technology, we can extrapolate from texts the pure frequencies, the pure vibrations, and make that much more accessible to people. So people can just feel it through sound, through music, through patterns, through geometry. And the extrapolation of those codes, if you imagine it like musical codes, we can use technology like AI, data-driven algorithms to almost read and find within these ancient text patterns that when translated in a particular way or brought to us using sound or translated in sound or frequencies or patterns have a direct effect on us. And that effect is as profound, it's as profound as standing at the mountain of Sinai when Moses revealed the 10 Sfichot, the 10 Commandments, or when Jesus gave his sermons on the Mount, or these moments in time when people were awakened. And what we still connect to when Buddha gives his great insights to his teachings. So it's kind of giving people that direct experience using technology to distill the essence of these wisdoms so people can experience them more directly. That's really the
nutshell. Actually, I can even think of an even localized version for here. I mean, we can get the local Indigenous Australian Aboriginal stories, which is Dreamtime stories.
Yes.
They're all handed down vocally. I know for a fact off the coast of Perth there's an island called Rottnest Island. That was detached from the mainland after the last ice age, for example. But if you listen to the local Aboriginals, they actually talk about legends of when the time before when that was actually connected to the mainland. So these are really, really ancient stories. And now over here we're talking about, the Westerners got 4 seasons. They talk about 6 seasons, and this is going to be really, really. I can see this from a anthropological point of view. Is actually preserving culture, and I think
this is totally the potential to preserve culture and share it through technologies like VR, through technologies like AR, and it's like very directly or through different. And a project we were talking to is Hula Bell. If I pronounce her name, is an Aboriginal tribe in Australia, and we're talking with someone. I'm not sure if I'm not allowed to mention his name, about how to use VR to preserve that particular culture. And from their drawings to their stories to their map of reality, and actually using the technology to exactly preserve that culture and working with the elders to make sure that we can share that wisdom to the next generations. And there is that direct link to the past, and making sure that there is that direct link to the past through our ancestral lineage or through these lineages, because these lineages are actually the roots to understanding the human condition and our journeys ourselves and our relationship with the world. And it's so important that we preserve these cultures. There's endangered a certain species, but it gives us meaning, it gives us purpose, it gives us a place in the world when we live in a digitized age where there's an influx of information, nonsensical information, that disconnects us from truth. But again, what is true? Like you start opening the can. So what is truth?
What is truth? Yeah, we can.
It's a big conversation. We're just touching on big topics.
Yeah, I think we can go on ontological and an I can't even say the word properly. Ontological and epistemological. Epistemological debate for like a whole 2 hours if we really want to discuss what is truth and how do you come to your truth.
Totally. To come to the same seeing, because it's a journey back to self through these discussions. It's an unraveling of mind. And so this is a beautiful thing. It might take 2 hours to have that conversation, but if we're both given the experience as one in a moment, we both have the experience. There is no need for discussion. It's a known experience. When you have an experience that is known, all words become superfluous. There is no discussing. There's no, we're just like, did you? Yes. Wow. And then we see each other through the experience. And that true seeing is the point. The whole point is to see, right? To see the cultures, to see the history, to see the pain, to see the love, to see the beauty, to see everything, to see all aspects of our humanity, to feel that compassion and empathy, that truth. The whole journey of humanity is really of this. But that is it's the hardest journey and the most direct journey. It's that everything exists in its polarities and its paradoxes. Truth is a paradox by its own design because it's both yin and yang, it's light and dark, Anyway, sorry.
Yes.
How does technology make that?
Technology
has the potential to support this understanding. And that's, for me, a good use of these technologies today to preserve cultures, to share it more directly, to help us connect and understand truth, to bring us back into a connection with our ancestry, to reconnect our ancestry, to find those deep roots, because We want to leave the world a little bit better than the way we kind of came into it.
Exactly right.
And we need to find the will. So going back to find the will, the desire to do that, like something greater than myself. So in an age of Instagram where everything is about me, but it's instant gratification, but it leaves us still feeling very empty, we have to go deeper than these tools to be like, actually, it's not about me, it's about we. And actually, when I reshift my focus, sorry, you were...
Yeah, I was saying, I love that concept of we. I reckon that's what we need to be discussing, and like, I truly dig it.
This is what you're doing, Dave.
You're right.
This is why you host this podcast, right? Because you want to give a voice to people like myself to facilitate that sharing. And you're like, you know what? That comes from something very pure. It's like you're doing this. You're putting yourself out there, and you're like, I want to give this guy, Luke Levine, an opportunity to express something because we need to make the world a bit better. So this is my contribution. And that contribution opens the doors to magic.
And what's magic without meaning?
What's magic without meaning?
Yeah.
What is?
And so I'm getting really, really on a higher plane there. What's some other applications of extended reality that we haven't touched yet, but you'd like people out there to be made aware of?
So the potential to treat conditions like mental health problems, PTSD and trauma, using sensory stimuli. So there was a project that I was working on called Sensix that was not just an audiovisual experience, which is what VR is, but it actually stimulated the other senses, the idea that you could smell and taste and feel the experience as well. And it was just like a 5D experience, full sensory experience. And that was being tested on certain patients with PTSD and trauma and certain health issues, mental health issues, if so to speak. And they were using biometric feedback. So the idea that you can stimulate some parts of the brain or help unravel traumas that were deep-rooted from people who had combat experiences. One example, there's a soldier that was reliving a trauma from being blown up by a mine, I think. And how do we unravel certain experiences that have become very painful? It's like you can use these technologies to almost recreate the experience and soften the experience. So slowly you come back and you face that process over and over again until it no longer has such a traumatic response. You help the mind unravel its own pain. And then you can measure the biometrics and respond to that in real time. So your heart rate, your skin conductivity, your brain waves, and really kind of create simulations that are going to help people really face some of their darkest or most painful experiences. That's the potential for these things.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that is quite some profound applications, and I think thanks to this sort of technology, the world is going to be a better place. And speaking of which, as this podcast is about the future, the year is 2031. How do you envision immersive technology then?
There are different visions. There's like a dystopian and utopian vision of the future, right? That we've seen the movies, we've read the books. How do I envision it? Well, technology is the tool. It depends. It's like that Native American, Native Indian saying. It's like there are two wolves that are fighting, the dark one and the light one. Which one wins? It's the one you feed, right? It's like the education process is the key. It's like, how do we best apply these tools to create that better future, and unfortunately for the majority of the world, people are motivated by power and greed. It's just, we live in a society that's kind of, there's a place at the top that we have to get to, and everyone's running to fulfill that top position at the top of the pyramid, and technologies are driven towards consuming more, buying more, distracting, a lot of distraction and disconnection with technology. But it's not so black and white that people are trying to solve these problems. A beautiful view of the world is one which is where technology empowers us to create better futures. For example, if we use technology to reimagine how we can build the lived environment, real estate, right? We can say, actually, having these kind of ghetto concrete kind of developments where people are living on tower blocks, which are void of greenery, void of nature, void of soul, let's say, and they just to deal with, that's not healthy for people to live like that, right? So one of the beautiful use cases of VR is to remodel how we live, how we work, how we socialize. And if people come to the table with that intention, which is that first intention, which is, I'm not going to focus on me, I'm focusing on the collective, we can shape a beautiful vision of the future with these tools. And it can help us visualize in real time. And there are people already working on these solutions today. And I'm working in real estate. I'm starting to work with many developers that are focusing on the regenerative space. Regenerative culture is like, how do we build future communities that are self-sustaining, that have permaculture gardens, that have the solar energy or wind energy, or are able to sustainably kind of have a zero carbon footprint, or recycle all their waste and reuse everything in a kind of completely sustained or regenerative way. And there are people envisioning here, specifically in Portugal, and this is one of the reasons why I'm here in Portugal working, and there's a conference happening called the Rebuild that my friend's running, which is really about rebuilding the Village 3.0, how societies should live and connect in the future. But at the root of that, which is for me, is to make that successful, because we've seen these kind of models in the past that haven't worked, that people kind of identify with the 60s and hippie culture, and that's all just it's been tarnished with that brush. At the root of that is, what's the wisdom? What's driving these future communities? What's inspiring these future communities? And how do people work together or work through their own things, their own problems together, to heal together, to grow together, to create that different model for living, to create that different value system, to say, you know what, we can completely redefine how we live, work, play, connect, share, love, right? We can, and that's totally possible. Like, it's actually possible. Like, and there, but it starts with, there's a process to reshaping the self. And so I see many different visions of the future, and it really depends on the seeds that we plant today. And people like yourself are opening that dialogue, and in your way, we're all contributing to this potential.
Absolutely.
And technology with the right consciousness will shape that better future much quicker to deal with big world problems.
Absolutely. I'm 100% on with you with collective behavior. And I think even the Dalai Lama himself wrote that the essence of happiness is connecting with community. So,
it's super important.
And I think that's probably the most profound lesson we can take away today is we need to get reconnected with one another. I know lockdowns forced us to live in separation, but once this is all over, why not talk to your neighbours? Why not do things for the community? Why not connect with one another and bring back that collective good that was missing for so long?
It's painful, but it's a painful. It's a painful process, actually.
You know, people who are connected and have an active social life live longer, have more health benefits. It's all, and if you're isolated, you're going to die a lonely death, and it really is affected, and the studies have shown it. So I think what we're doing here and what you're discussing is probably, I dare say, it's sparking a quiet revolution of bringing back we, and I love that concept. I really do, that concept of we instead of me. Let's start to think about how to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and the future will be bright if we do.
Well, we can unpack this. I mean, everything that I've touched on is something that can be unpacked for hours. And it's what I also understand is it's probably not going to... The ultimate realization for myself was that it's not something that I need to even try and... Luke Levine is not the one who's going to shape this. Luke is a small drop in an ocean, but also is the ocean in a drop. It's unsettling. And I play my part to do the bit that I'm meant to do, and that will affect those people. Everything is, it's all part of, everyone plays their role in the shaping of that future, and everyone's consciousness is also plays a role in shaping that. Whether if you believe, if you think you can, you think you can't, you're right? It's like, if you believe you can make an impact, you're going to make an impact. If you believe you can't make an impact, you're not making an impact. If you want to empower the future, you're going to empower the future. But ultimately, there is a convergence where everything does move towards this shift. We can observe that. There's a spiral effect. Life repeats itself, history repeats itself, but in a spiral dynamic of moving upwards towards something more beautiful, greater potential. It doesn't mean that shit doesn't come up like we live in today, but that shit that comes up is also an opportunity to grow. Like the COVID opportunity has brought people together, has brought up bigger questions, has also created more separation too. So more separation has also created a desire for greater connectivity, deepening and truth. But both will play out at the same time. It's always both.
Yeah. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you this morning, afternoon my time. Finally, before I let you go, and where else can we find you? Soul
Lingua, XRA applied. So in terms of building technology So if anyone wants to explore how to build systems, and there are many different things that we can build using AR and VR, how can we use technologies to build a better future? That's XRA applied. And that's where we actually are building products today. Also, there's my own personal work that I'm doing around this that's connected to soul lingual gatherings. So I'm doing work which is very much connected to translating ancient wisdom into using modern technologies to make it much more accessible. And that's something to do with soul lingua and I'm looking to marry these two worlds as well. So.
Best of luck in your endeavours, and I'm sure we'll probably report back in about this time next year as how you're progressing, because I think we're just about to open up a whole new worlds of possibility, and thanks to folk like you. So, Luke, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave.
No worries. And thank you very much for Luke for his input. Next week, we've got Jamie Bosch from VoiceMod in Valencia in Spain, and he's going to talk about how we can change our voices inside the metaverse. And also I'm going to discuss in further detail how you can actually change your avatar, your parents, and whoever you wish inside this new realm. And following that, we'll be looking at ways that AI and NFTs will play inside the metaverse in coming up series. So this is going to be a very fascinating topic that we're going to cover in November. I think I'm going to say some of the best stuff till last, so stay tuned. The Friendly Futurist is a Podcast West production. It's been produced and edited by me, Dave Monk. Further editing by Alvin Lasuna. If you love this show, the best thing to do on the existing internet is go onto the Acast app, follow us, leave a 5-star review, and hit that subscribe notification bell. That way you will never miss out on a new episode as they publish. Alternatively, follow us on your favourite podcast platforms. We also do prefer Spotify, if that floats your boat. Please follow us, leave a review, and recommend us to your family, friends, greengrocers, or some random dude you met on the metaverse. If you really love to support the show, the best thing you can do is tip or donation via Buy Me a Coffee, details in the show notes, or subscribe to my monthly newsletter on Substack. And this month I'm going to be writing all about the metaverse, because it's something I can't let go of. It's going to be huge. Until next time, friends, remember, stay curious and the future is user-friendly.